Thank you very much, Kholi. Let's wrap up the business day here at News at Prime. SA Treasury says it's seeing improvement in the delivery of reforms in the country. In terms of energy, Eskom's electricity supply has been stabilized, leading to a more competitive, reliable energy market. On the movement of goods, Godongwana says rail and port bottlenecks are being dismantled through public-private partnerships to try to shore up the country's logistics capabilities. Now, to deliver on basic services, the Treasury will introduce reforms in local government, including shifting to a performance-linked utility model for water and electricity services. This is aimed at strengthening financial stability, accountability and transparency. Now, joining us to unpack this is Samira, Mensah, Head of Research and Analytics Africa at S&P Global Ratings. Samira, looking at what the minister had to say today, you are part of a ratings agency. Some of the things you were looking out for, and did the minister deliver?
Thank you for having me on the show. Look, we have a positive outlook on South Africa, and this was based on the sort of improvement in the fiscal outlook, which is in line with what the minister announced, with higher government revenue. So that will certainly support the improvement in the fiscal outlook. We are also forecasting a stabilization of the debt. Slightly coming down, certainly thanks to a fiscal consolidation, albeit a slow fiscal consolidation through 2028. And so all of that pans well with the positive outlook that we have on our BB rating of South Africa. And if you remember, we have upgraded South Africa by one notch back in November. And the next review is coming up later in May.
Let's talk about that grading in November to BB, a big move for South Africa, one that has been championed by government since it happened. What more does SA Treasury and the South African government need to do and secure to make sure that it gets a better credit rating?
Yes, so this positive outlook hinges really on the continuation of economic reforms that will support the improvement on the infrastructure at large in South Africa, and that will feed directly into GDP growth. And I think what we have heard as well is certainly an improvement of headline GDP growth, which is in line also with our own forecast around 1.5% in 2026-2028 fiscal years. And so, you might think these numbers are fairly, small in terms of just absolute numbers, but it's important because if you remember, South Africa economy grew by less than 1% in 2024. I believe it was 0.5%. So it is meaningful. It is not where it should be, but certainly traveling in the right direction.
Since the G20, there's been talk about ratings agencies changing their approach to grading some of these countries, including South Africa, given that we are a resource-rich country. Does it matter to you as a ratings agency that South Africa is currently benefiting from the better commodity prices on the market, especially with gold and platinum?
Yes, it's important, look, because it feeds into not only overall economic growth, the positive commodity cycle and the positive terms of trade feeds into the performance of the external sector. And so, yes, it's absolutely important and supporting of the rating. That being said, we are forecasting, I believe, a small deficit of the current account at 1.7% of GDP for 2026-2028 on average, 1.7%. It's a small deficit. It's not the end of the world. That being said, when we look also at the external sector, when we look at the financial sector, we look at whether a sovereign has some external assets. And that is the case, actually, when we look at the consolidated balance sheet of the country. South Africa is in a net external asset position, and that supports the rating, along with, the monetary policy settings, the credible central bank that has acted in a way that was effective to lower inflation, and lower interest rates as a result feed into lower interest rates and interest bill for the government as they pay down the debt. So I think it's all a positive cycle from that standpoint.
That positive cycle, there's a dark cloud over it, and that is, of course, South Africa's heavy debt, paying 1.2 billion rand a day to service some of that debt. What number would be sweet for an S&P Global in terms of making sure debt to GDP is managed in the country?
Yeah, so we are looking on a forecast basis here at a debt to GDP of 70, just slightly above 75% at the moment, 77, I think, or 78%. So it's close to that 80%, which is a high number. We have another threshold, which is around 60% that could feed into an improvement of that debt assessment. But we look at the credit and at the rating holistically as well. And certainly the fiscal consolidation supports less debt accumulation. The contingent liability also stemming from SOEs is also another factor that we look at. And for now, indeed, it has been a negative factor because of the guarantees and the support that has been provided to Eskom in particular and Transnet to a lesser extent, but it has also fed into the contingent liability, and that means the debt stock. So that debt stock is really important. But as the direction of travel is towards fiscal consolidation, the debt stock will come down slowly, but not materially over the forecast of our outlook, which is about 12 months, to sort of change really the rating. What the positive outlook hinges on really is the fiscal metrics, so the fiscal deficits, which we forecast at around 3.5% of GDP over through 2028, and a higher growth number, 1.5%. So these two numbers, we are looking at them quite carefully, providing that, of course, holistically, we have a stable government reform path supported by a stable coalition as well.
Is there an appetite for a school of thought, especially from a ratings agency like yourself, that says South Africa is a developing nation, so you need to borrow money in order to make money so the economy grows? We are currently at 1.6%, so our borrowing may be fixed at trying to fix the problem in terms of infrastructure, but also boost our growth. Is there some room to say, okay, this country isn't particularly in debt for just the hell of it, but only trying to make sure that it grows?
Accumulation of debt that feeds into higher headline growth is beneficial, right? And the idea of investing in transformative infrastructure like projects certainly are meant to essentially create more jobs and grow the pie of South Africa, so grow the economy. And so these results would necessarily fit and feed into the credit rating automatically. So the debt, if it is a useful debt, that is a productive debt, then will feed and will translate into higher GDP growth, lower unemployment rate, and so on.
All right, that was Samira Mensah, Head of Research and Analytics Africa at S&P Global Ratings.